Hello and welcome to the third episode of the MAPS Canada Expert Edition webinar series, the Ethnobotany of Psychoactive Plants. My name is Michael Oliver and I will be your host for the series. After 2 successful seasons of examining the psychedelic renaissance, MAPS Canada has decided to start a parallel mini-series with some of our experts. Each expert edition will feature a previous guest from a past season in a 4-episode mini-series. This series is open to anyone, and we really hope that you might feel inclined to share it with your friends if you enjoyed today's episode. We do encourage donations if you're in a position to give, and your support goes a long way in helping us work towards the legalization of psychedelics. MAPS Canada is a non-profit charity that relies entirely on public donations to help us achieve our mission of expanding access of psychedelic medicines for all Canadians. To learn more about MAPS Canada, you can visit our website at www.mapscanada.org. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Just orienting yourself to Crowdcast. If you are new to Crowdcast, there's a few things to take note of. So on the right, you'll have your chat where you can see comments and questions sometimes from other viewers. We'd invite you to toss in your location where you're tuning in from on the chat. If you haven't already, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. And then if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a tab that says Ask a Question. And so this is an important part of Crowdcast too. Towards the end of today's talk, we're going to get some time to go through a question and answer session with Chris. And you'll be able to ask any question that you'd like during the talk down there where it says Ask a Question. So feel free to toss in your question there anytime you can. And also look at other people's questions. You can actually upvote and downvote other questions. And so the most popular questions will be prioritized. Episodes of this series will be recorded and available to watch again right here in Crowdcast. So if you miss an episode, you can still follow the invite link and view the replay. If you have any questions at all regarding Crowdcast or any of the technical stuff regarding the webinar, feel free to reach out to webinar@mapscanada.org. For this series, we are joined by special guest Chris Kilham. Chris Kilham is a medicine hunter, explorer, lifelong yogi, psychedelic advocate, and media personality. He has investigated medicinal plants among indigenous people globally for decades, from Siberia to the Amazon and to the Congo. Chris is the author of 15 books, including the international bestseller, The 5 Tibetans, Ayahuasca Test Pilot's Handbook, and The Lotus and the Bud, Cannabis, Consciousness, and Yoga Practice. Chris has appeared on over 2,000 radio and 500 TV programs, and the New York Times calls Chris part David Attenborough, part Indiana Jones. Each episode of this series has focused on different plant medicines, with today's episode spotlighting coca. Drawing upon more than 30 journeys into the Amazon and experiences with dozens of Amazonian shamans, it is my pleasure to introduce once again Chris Kilham to the Expert Edition stage. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a great pleasure to be with you here this evening. And, I was looking at this list of people, people kind of signing in and saying hi. I mean, we've got folks from Australia, Oaxaca, Guatemala. I mean, I expect California and Colorado, but I mean, we're getting folks really far and wide. So thank you all so much. And thank you to MAPS Canada for sponsoring this, for hosting this series. It's a great pleasure for me to get to share some of my accumulated knowledge and experience with folks, especially around psychoactive plants, which have interested me for decades. Tonight, I want to focus on coca. And and it was kind of funny, ahead of time, I was looking at some comments on Instagram and other places where some people were saying, I don't care what anybody says, this stuff is just plain bad for you. And I thought, okay, well, that's sort of a good place to start. So what I'm going to do is tell you just very briefly about me, in case you haven't been on one of these previous things. I work conducting ethnobotanical field work all over the world. I specialize in trade. So I work with indigenous native communities, whether it's in the Amazon or in different parts of Asia or the South Pacific or wherever, to develop sustainable trade in herbs and spices and medicinal plants, some of the so-called superfoods and superfruits, all with good environmental practices, good wage practices, and some equitable sharing programs and community development in mind. And in the course of doing so, it's been my great pleasure to encounter medicinal and psychoactive plants of great value and worth to their respective communities. So what I'm going to do now is take you on a little bit of a journey about coca, and then we can spend some time with Q&A, and it'll be my great pleasure to answer your questions. So let's see if I can just get this done right here. Michael, am I happening here?
Almost. I think you still got to share your screen. It's not up yet.
It still didn't happen there?
No.
Okay. Okay. Now how are we?
We're getting closer. We see your PowerPoint, so let's see if you full screen it. Perfect. Looking great.
Okay. All right. So tonight we're on to coca, shamans, and divination in the Andes. It's been my good fortune to visit the Andes, primarily working with maca for the last 23 years. So I've been up there at least 20 times. I've spent a lot of time with communities of people in the Andes. And among the plants that I've been repetitively exposed to in the course of this work, going up into the Andes, being in the Andes, staying there, and also just generally around through Peru, is coca. And there are two species of coca of interest in terms of cultivation. One is Erythroxylum coca, and the other is Erythroxylum novogranitens. It's primarily Erythroxylum coca that we're interested in because that's the one that's most widely cultivated in the Andean region that I'm going to spend some time telling you about. I'd like you just to go ahead and read this. Basically, anytime a culture has a creation myth for a plant, if a god or goddess or some great spirit bestows a plant to humanity, it usually means that that plant is of extremely high value and significance. In Peruvian mythology, Manco Capac, who was also the person who supposedly founded the the Incan civilization, and who was considered the son of the sun itself, bestowed blessings to people of the Andes, and that included useful arts, teaching them how to cultivate different crops so they could thrive and have nutrition, and also furnishing them with coca. And this was to help them to satisfy hunger, to allay fatigue, and also to help to inspire them. So early rooted in Peruvian myth and lore, we have coca as a divine gift. Now, what comes to mind for most people when they think of coca is cocaine. Of the total composition of coca leaf dried, on average, about 1% of it is cocaine, which is a tropane alkaloid that is very powerful and very fast acting. But coca also contains hundreds of other naturally occurring compounds. It's really a constellation of alkaloids. It happens to be that cocaine is the most powerful of them, but there are many alkaloids, about 17 that are known in coca leaf, plus carbohydrates, vitamin A, some of the B vitamins, some minerals, especially iron and calcium. And there are human studies showing that coca helps to regulate blood glucose, helping to stabilize metabolism, and also to protect blood vessel linings. And this is of particular importance because the people who live in the Andes at high altitude are exposed to conditions that cause fragility of the blood vessels. And one of the most important things they consume to defend and protect against that and keep their blood vessels strong and supple and non-porous is coca, primarily by chewing it, but also by drinking the tea. So coca is grown in plots that are called cocals. A few years ago, when a couple of us were on the road to Tingo Maria, which is a kind of a major coca producing area, we started coming upon cocals in different places. So planted coca. Coca's a bush. It produces green leaves, not completely dissimilar in appearance to how tea grows. You have to be careful when you approach somebody's cocal, because most of the narcos who grow coca don't really want any people around. And so you have to be a little bit cautious when you're in these areas. But basically, the leaves of coca are gathered in a manner similar to the way tea is picked. I've spent a bunch of time in tea plantations in India, in China, in Thailand, and in those plantations, it's almost always women who pick the tea, and they pull off the leaves, especially the tender green leaves on top, and they throw them into a basket. And while the harvesting of coca isn't as it doesn't require as much art, because you really want to get all the leaves. At the very same time, you want people who can pick quickly, actually. So in this instance, it's women and kids who usually wind up harvesting coca. So here's another shot of a cocal. These plots may be a couple of hectares, a hectare being, 2.2 acres. They may be even slightly bigger, but they're not usually vast. Now in Colombia, where there are large tracts of land that are dedicated to coca production, and where coca is cultivated more widely than any place in the world, there are very large plantings. But in general, in Peru, you don't see that so much. So the name coca, it derives from the Aymara word coca, which means the tree. You may have heard of the Aymara. They're an indigenous group to the Andes. There are about 3 million or so Aymara people right now. And they occupy the central plateau of the Andes in Bolivia and in Peru and Chile. And for these people, coca is a central aspect of culture, a central aspect of nutrition. It's an important agent in their lives. And it is the case, as I said before, that among these people, for the most part, it is Erythroxylum coca, not Novagrana tens, that is cultivated. It's also known as Bolivian or Huánuco coca. And a quick story about Huánuco, which is a town I've been to a couple of times. Huánuco was built entirely on the cocaine trade, and I'll be speaking about cocaine in a few minutes. But when you go by, you'll go by any number of villages and small towns that are kind of okay in the region, and then you get to Huánuco, and Huánuco can only be described as splendid. Beautiful avenues, gorgeous parks, lovely buildings, beautiful fountains, flowers, festivals are lovely. All of that really developed as a direct result of the coca trade. So on the one hand, the production of cocaine just leads to endless misery and health disorders of all types among users. And on the other hand, for the people on the field end, sometimes it's a rather remarkable community boon, as it is in the case of Huánuco. So here in a market, I'll show you some market shots. It is typical and common to see coca leaves either sold as they are in small bags that you see on the left-hand side, these green plastic bags, or in a large bag like this. So you might, for example, want to fill a huge plastic bag and take that with you. Here I am just digging into a bag of coca leaves and holding them up for the camera. The leaves are always kind of crispy dry. Coca leaves are firm. They're not, they get brittle, as all leaves do over time, but after they're freshly dried, they're really quite sturdy. So here you see a good shot of the La Parada market in Lima, which is at sea level, not at altitude like in the Andes. where you have these huge, huge barrels of coca leaf. Coca leaf, it sounds so funny to us because you can't go into a market in the US and just buy coca leaf. You can't do it. It's a controlled substance. And yet, throughout all of Peru, you can get coca leaf tea, some coca candies, none of which I can tell you, having drunk a couple of thousands of cups of coca tea and having chewed an awful lot of coca, none of which will get you high. This really has no relation to what happens if you, for example, do some pure cocaine. Coca is mildly stimulating as a tea, mildly stimulating in some other preparations, but not necessarily as much so, or certainly not more than a good cup of black tea. So it's a mild and flavorful beverage. There is another use, though, for coca, and this is as flour for food. Coca is a nutritious substance. It, as I showed on an earlier slide, it has vitamins, minerals, and it is probably also the case that in addition to being cardioprotective, that it is very good for digestion. There's more than a little bit of suggestion of that, and some studies that show that. So many people use coca flour as part of the flour composition of breads and cakes and baked goods. It has a relatively benign taste, less taste than, say, you'd get from kale, although a little bit more astringent. And when it's mixed with other types of flour and baked goods, it's not really particularly obtrusive. So it is also used purely as a food. In the La Parada market, there is a place that I like to take journalists. I've been fortunate to travel to Peru with ABC television and NBC and Outside Magazine and some other news entities, CNN. And we always try to get them to go to the La Parada market because it's one of the most diverse and unusual markets. And also there's a fun little surprise at what we time as the end of our tour, and that is the frog blender drink stand. And here I am with a guy named Michael, who was a host of a show that was done with me in Maca country. And we are drinking, along with the guy who's kind of behind me, Shaman Don Alejandro Alfaro, we're drinking Maca frog coca blender drinks, more as a dare than anything else, although the Peruvians insist that frog is very, very good for the brain. But in any case, the green drinks mostly because of the coca, and we all survived it just fine. Some people get to this and they just kind of cave, and it's fun to see who's game and who's not. Here's an example of a coca leaf tea that is very popular. You will find Delice and other brands like it throughout supermarkets, small markets, roadside stands. If you go to any hotel in the Andes, above just a few thousand feet, you're going to find Coca Leaf Tea in the lobby at all times, free for guests. You go to any restaurant in Peru, you'll find coca leaf tea bags among the various teas that you can select, and put into your hot water. Coca tea is ubiquitous, and here's what it looks like. Usually there'll be a couple of leaves in a cup, and the water will turn a bit green. The aroma is light and pleasant. If you can say it has a green aroma, I think many of you will know what I mean. So it has somewhat of a green aroma and a pleasant, if lightly astringent flavor. It's not a strong flavor. Now, per cup of coca leaf tea, you're going to get between 3 and 5 milligrams of cocaine, which is very, very little, and sufficient enough to maybe give a perceptible lift. But as you're going up altitude into the Andes, and we do work in Maca country at around 15,000 feet, where the air is very thin, and people can get tremendous altitude sickness. We do use coca to help us to adjust to the altitude. Ideally, we would take 4 to 6 days to go from sea level to that altitude. But because of the work we do with maca and our desire for speed, we usually go from sea level to that altitude in about 7.5 hours. So Coca Leaf Tea is our friend, especially up in the Andes, as is chewing coca leaf. You can also find some coca wines, and they're not super popular, but they do exist. Here in the market, you can see have an assortment of plastic bottles of different various herbal extracts and concoctions of different types. Behind them, that sort of disc-like shaped thing is Sacha Hergone, which is a plant that's used to treat snake bite. And then these bags in front are bags of coca leaf. So that would probably cost you maybe the equivalent, one of those bags may be the equivalent of $1, maybe even not that much. Here's another kind of classic example of a small section of a Peruvian herbal shop. You'll find everything from menthol and camphor-based pain-relieving balms to uña de gato, cat's claw, which is an anti-inflammatory vine, cat's claw chips. On the right-hand side, you've got some Palo Santo, which is their wood, the fragrant wood that burns. So you'll find all kinds of things in these markets. And here I believe this is actually in Pucallpa, at a stand there, you've got a woman basically tending to a bag of coca leaves. So a little bit about history. I mean, we don't know a huge amount about ancient coca use, although we do have some fascinating news that I'll share in a moment. But basically, the first non-native written description of coca-chewing was by this physician, Don Pedro Velasco Crespo. And it's kind of fascinating what he said, because he got his descriptions down extremely well. The Indians masticate the coca. Each individual carries a leathern pouch called the hualqui, or chuspa, and a small flask gourd called the ishupuru. The pouch contains a supply of coca leaves, and the gourd is filled with pulverized, unslaked lime. Usually 3 or 4 times a day, the Indian suspends his labor for the purpose of masticating the coca. This particular operation is termed chauchar or akulikar. Some of the coca leaves are masticated until they form a small ball in the mouth. Or as it is called, an akuliko. A thin slip of damp wood is then thrust into the ishupuru, or the gourd, which contains the lime. When drawn out, some portion of that powdered lime adheres to it. The akuliko, or the ball of masticated coca, is, while still lying in the mouth, it's punctured with this slip of wood. The lime mixes with the coca. The abundant saliva starts to flow. The person spits out some of that, swallows some of that, and once the coca is really spent, once there's no more juice, it's thrown away and the process starts again. We know that coca-chewing is extraordinarily common among Andean people, something that happens virtually every day. Every single time I've been up in the Andes, I've wound up chewing coca, simply either as part of a ceremony or as part of just getting a little bit of relief from the altitude. Here you can see, this is a particular area where we work a lot, actually behind a Maca storage facility that my friend Sergio operates. So way up in the Andes, about 15,500 feet, no trees, no bushes. We're way far above the tree line, extremely harsh, oxygen thin, chapping winds. When the sun's out, it'll burn you in minutes. It's a very inhospitable atmosphere. And it is here that the shamans practice coca divination. And I want to set the scene a little bit with this. We know that Coca-Chewing goes back as far as 8,000 years and perhaps further back than that. We have archaeological evidence from mummies of traces of coca going back 1,000 years, but there was a more recent discovery of artifacts that show 8,000 years of use chewing coca. The Aymara people accept the Apus, which are the gods and goddesses of the mountains. Perhaps the most famous of all, considered the world mother, is Pachamama. Pachamama is considered a global Apu, a global goddess, if you will. And coca is used as an ally for propitiating the gods, for putting you in a mood to be more receptive to the energy and the goodness and the gods have to bestow. And so it plays an important role in the spiritual life of people in the Andes, as well as in the nutritional and just alertness life of these people. So I'm going to show you some images of two shamans, Doña Lucy, which is this woman right here, and Doña Sofia, both of whom are shamans in a little town called Ninacaca, way up in the Junin Plateau in the central Andes of Peru, and both of whom do ceremonies with coca, and both of whom also divine information and divine the future with coca. Anywhere that a ceremony is going to be held, a ceremony of any kind, and in this instance, I'm not talking about something like ayahuasca, where people sit and drink something and go on a long, far-out psychedelic journey. The shamans in the Andes like to do more ritual ceremonies, and they like to work with ceremonial objects quite a bit. And it always involves the drinking of pisco. Whatever the ceremony is, no matter who's conducting it, whatever else is going to go on, everybody will drink some pisco. And pisco is the national grape alcohol of Peru. And it's very strong. It's strong like vodka, but it's something that is just part and parcel of ceremonies. So here, Doña Lucy offers a little snort of pisco to somebody in our group, and everybody will get a little bit of this, and then we'll go on to the next part. So here, Doña Lucy is sitting with her hands in a bag of coca, and she is concentrating on the coca, and she is contemplating it. And with her hands in this coca, she's also speaking to the Apus, and she's asking for guidance. In this instance, while I have no idea what the question was that somebody asked her, she was seeking guidance for answering a particular question that had been asked to her in ceremony. So what she does, what these Andean shamans do, is she speaks to the coca leaves. She talks to them, she requests information, she asks for assistance, she asks for guidance, she asks for visions to be shown to her so that she can help the people who come to her. When she does that, after she does that, she reaches into the bag and she takes out a handful of coca leaves, and then she shows them. Now, here's where it gets strange. I've sat with Doña Lucy and Doña Sofia, her friend or shaman friend, many, many times in many ceremonies. I have watched them reach into the coca bag and come out and say, oh, yeah, you're going to be pregnant in 2 months, and other things like that, and be remarkably accurate in their forecasts, which I have found rather amazing. one time I was up in the Andes, and Dona Lucy and Dona Sofia were sitting together. We were having a ceremony to bless the land for a good maca crop. And Dona Lucy pulled a handful of coca leaves. This was December. She pulled a handful of coca leaves out of the bag, and she looked at them and she said, "Wow, you're coming back real soon." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I probably won't be back until about June or so, Dona Lucy at the earliest, I think." And Dona Sofia leaned over and looked and said, "No, you're coming back real soon." Now, these are two lovely women, and I don't really want to, annoy them. And I said, "Well, I don't really think so. I think I'm coming back in June." And they were like, "No, no, 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 you're coming back real soon." So anyway, when I got home from that trip, a few days later, I received a call from a reporter from the New York Times who knew about my work with maca and wanted to know if it was possible to get up into the Andes with me anytime soon. So about 3 weeks later, I showed up again with this particular reporter, Andrew Downey, and Dona Sofia and Dona Lucy were there, and they said, "We told you so. We don't know why you didn't believe us. We said you were coming back really soon." So the thing that I can tell you is that with shamans, and we see this with ayahuasca, we see this with peyote, we see this with mushrooms, we see that the shamans are the practitioners who make deep, deep, deep connections with these plants or fungus, somehow contact information. I've had it explained to me by shamans. I've had it shown to me by shamans. And what I understand is that they really do get information from these plant spirits. So the plant spirit winds up being a key ally in divination. Now, here you have Dona Lucy. What she has done is she has put a quid of coca in her mouth. She chewed it a little bit to get it a little bit soft, tucked it into her cheek. She has taken this slip of wood, stuck it into a gourd of lime. Now she's puncturing that. This will help to tease out the maximum amount of alkaloids. The 1% cocaine, which lime or no lime isn't going to get you high, and the other perhaps 17 alkaloids. Alkaloids are fast-acting substances, and there's no question that the supportive alkaloids, while not as powerful as cocaine, contribute to the overall effects of the plant nonetheless. So now we have an example of shamanic ceremony with coca. Here on the left, you have Dona Sofia, one of the two village shamans, the other Dona Lucy on the right-hand side, who live and work in Ninacaca, which is a primary cultivation town for maca, and where Chacarunas Trading Company, which is a group I've worked with since 1998, has a facility and does a lot of work for the community. So on a regular basis, these women may be called to help a family. They may be called to help start an enterprise. They may be called to commemorate a particular important or auspicious occasion by performing a ceremony. And in their case, what they do is they dig a hole in the ground, or they usually have somebody else dig it for them, that's about 1.5 feet deep and maybe, more than, say, about 1.5 feet wide as well. And that becomes the place where they place ceremonial objects. They're chewing coca the whole time. They're talking to the spirits of the opus the entire time. They're selecting flower blossoms, candles, candies, soda. They also, you see here, Dona Sofia is concentrating on a flower, sending good energy into that flower. That flower will then go into the ceremonial hole where they're placing other objects. Here, Dona Lucy is doing the same thing. One of the things they do, which is very unsettling for visitors, we've had a lot of people squirm, is that at a certain point in the ceremony, they will take a guinea pig out of a bag, slit its throat, and drain its blood into the hole over the other objects. The guinea pig, or cuy, as they're known to the Andean people, are not only a primary food, kind of eaten like chicken, but also considered a sacred food in many ways. And so their blood is believed to be of great value in terms of completing these ceremonies. And I'm not saying if it is or isn't, I'm simply saying this is their long tradition. I've never been a big fan of ritual killings myself. Here you have Dona Lucy, while this ceremony is ongoing, taking time to give coca leaves to different people. Everybody wants, everybody's had a little bit of pisco, everybody's chewing coca. They'll offer tobacco to anybody who wants it as well. Recall that tobacco, which I talked about in the first ayahuasca episode of this 4-part series, is an important plant to indigenous people of North and South America. And it's something that they also use to communicate with the spirits. So here you have Dona Sofia. She has a bundle of coca leaves between her palms, and she's concentrating on the spirit of coca, and she's also propitiating the apus, the mountain gods and goddesses, the mountain spirits, which are all around, spirits of water, spirits of air, spirits of the sun, spirits of the earth, spirits of the plants. She's calling on all of that for support, in this instance, to help to maintain good fortune for the local Maca enterprise. And here selecting more flowers and other things to go into the hole. And here you have a completed ceremonial hole. Now, this has probably taken, an hour or so to put together. There'll be a little bit more pisco drinking. There'll be a little bit more coca chewing. There may be some additional divination. People have any further questions they want to ask. And then what will happen is the hole will be covered with soil. So all of this will be filled back in. And there are some places, especially the area near Chacarunas, where they have the warehouse, that there are probably 20 of these that have happened over time. So scattered throughout the area around it will be these different places where the shamans have performed this ceremony to help keep good fortune going, to help to support the community. And people rely on these shamans. They also are remarkably wise women. They know the use of other herbs. They're also very helpful when it comes to childbirth and other things. So they're important agents in their communities. Here you can see on the right-hand side, coca leaves lying amidst a number of other products and spices in a market. This is Maca country, as I said before, and these people are sowing maca seed. So you look at this landscape, again, about 15,500 feet. They all have bags of seeds. They're all broadcasting seeds. But what they did before they did this was they all stood around and chewed coca for about 15 minutes to give them the stamina to go a long, 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 long distance, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, up and down, row after row after row, in this huge Maca Field, probably 40 hectares in all, and to do this work without tiring. So this is where the allaying fatigue part of coca. Have I been saying maca, by the way, for the past few minutes? I hope I meant I meant coca if I have been. The coca really does allay fatigue. So it helps people to work for a long, long time in what are really difficult conditions. I mean, at its very best, this area is pleasant briefly during the days. You may get hail in the summer. The weather is just terribly harsh. And this is where these people live. This is where they thrive. And they rely on maca as a nutritious food and coca as a food and a medicine and an ally to see them through. Here, my friend Sergio Cam, with whom I've traveled in Peru for 23 years, and I are with Doña Sofia and Doña Lucy, again, outside near Chacarunas Trading Company. One of the things that invariably happens with the projects that I get to go back to again and again and again is the developing of friendships and to see people thrive. When I was first in this community, when I first went up there in 1998 to start Maca Trade, they didn't have any paved roads. They really didn't have electricity. Their school facilities were poor. Kids couldn't afford supplies. They didn't have any medicine. They didn't have any dentistry. They didn't have any internet. It kind of went on and on and on and on like that. Over the years, the good fortune of the Maca market means that they have paved roads where they want them. They have more plumbing. People have electricity. People have heat. The school's better. They have adequate supplies. Kids have uniforms. There's medicine available. There's an internet cafe. So what happens is that you really touch people's lives with these sustainable botanical trade projects. And part of what happens is I also wind up making good connections with lovely, lovely human beings like Doña Sofia and Doña Lucy. So here is a kind of a typical example of what Maca Field looks like. This has been rototilled by tractor, and now it's ready for planting. But you can see it's a combination of stark and beautiful up there. Here you have people working in the Maca Harvest. And again, before doing this, before harvesting, which is a matter of digging root after root after root after root by the hundreds of tons worth in these huge plots of maca way out in the Andes, everybody stopped and chewed coca leaf. Everybody had coca. And after a while, they'll stop and do it again to keep going. And as I said before, you really don't get high from this stuff at all. Through history, there have been a lot of cocaine coca products. And I really do want to distinguish between coca leaf, which is fundamentally nutritious and which has not been associated with health problems among the Andean people, except for a softening of the enamel of the teeth due to the lime. Which isn't really that great for your teeth. But I want to make a clear distinction between coca leaf, the nutritious plant food, and cocaine and products made with it. In the early 1900s, cocaine was like Christmas morning for Park Davis Drug Company. And here you have Park Davis compressed tablets, which are cocaine, and these happen to be for, I can't even tell you what they're from, primarily for nausea. Cocaine was isolated in 1860, and Park Davis was really early to the party. Starting in the 1880s, they made candies and tablets and sprays and gargles. They actually made a cocaine-laced cigarette as well. And they even sold, and not by subscription, injectable cocaine that came conveniently enough with a syringe. So for a long time, from the 1880s until the ban on cocaine sales until 1922, it was a free-for-all out there. cocaine lollipops, cocaine sodas, cocaine candies. A lot of people were very high on cocaine, just as many people were hooked on laudanum, the opium elixir of the day. Cocaine was also applied topically. We know that cocaine is a topical anesthetic that is valuable in surgeries of the nose and the mouth and the larynx because it completely numbs those tissues and means that you can then operate successfully without pain. But it was also used on the head for the scalp and the hair, as in this Burnett's cocaine preparation, which I believe, came from Boston. We also have Heater Hall's cocaine, guaranteed to deaden that sweet tooth. This is a modern product, actually. And we have, again, from Tremont Street in Boston, the Theodore Metcalf Coca wine. And Coca wine was a thing for a time. It was something that many people turned to for stimulation, for creativity, for great ideas, for staying awake. Among the various Coca wines, certainly the most popular of them all was called Vin Mariani. And this was a very popular tonic wine. It was purportedly good as a sort of a general tonic to boost vitality, good for the brain, good for digestion. And it had its many, many adherents. It was patented in the 1860s by a chemist, and some famous people, including Ulysses Grant, consumed Vantonique Mariani, President McKinley did. Thomas Edison used it to stay awake. Jules Verne and H.G. Wells purportedly used Van Mariani for inspiration. And this was a pretty good snort of cocaine, actually. Each ounce of Van Mariani contains 7.2 milligrams of cocaine, but nobody drinks an ounce of wine. So if you had a 4-ounce glass of wine, you'd be good for about 30 milligrams of cocaine. And now you're getting into the real kind of zippity-doo-dah realm here with cocaine. And of course, if you had 5 ounces or more, then that simply means you'd have even more so. So it was a good, strong blast. Pope Leo awarded a gold medal to Van Mariani. A lot of people were very impressed with this product. It was wildly popular for a time and really considered to be great for the brain and nerves. And many of you may know that one of the real proponents of cocaine, not of coca, not of nutritious coca, but of cocaine, was Sigmund Freud, who was madly addicted to the stuff, had to have his nose operated on to open up his sinuses because he snorted so much of it, and had chest pains because he utilized so much of it. But cocaine really just went wild through the culture for a time. Today you have cocaine, which is used for medical purposes, very, very tightly controlled for oral and pharyngeal and laryngeal surgeries, for sinus surgeries. Otherwise, it's not really used in medicine as much anymore. There were cocaine toothache drops, which helped to deaden the sensation of tooth pain. That came from Lloyd Manufacturing Company in Albany, New York. And here we have yet another fluid extract of coca. And I actually can't tell you where this one came from, but there were hundreds and hundreds of coca products on the market that were not really coca. They were all actually cocaine in various delivery forms. Then we get to the great one. When a pharmacist named Asa Chandler bought a recipe for a drink that became what we know as Coca-Cola, a blend of coca leaf extract and the extract of the cola nut. As you can see here, cola nut, as you know, cola, when we drink cola beverages, that means that they are made with an extract of cola nut, which contains caffeine. So Coca-Cola for about 25 years had both cocaine from coca leaf extract, whole coca leaf extract, and caffeine from cola nut extract combined. So a good stimulating drink. Physicians liked it a lot. They recommended it for stomach problems. It was kind of a big thing. And now we're in that realm where, in the case of Coca-Cola, they were in fact using whole coca leaf extract, which included the cocaine. They had to have the cocaine out, though. In 1906, they started extracting cocaine out of this. And so when in 1922 coca was banned, basically cocaine was banned and made a Schedule I narcotic. It was already out of Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola still contains coca leaf extract. And if you'll recall, some of you may remember, I think it was in the 90s, the so-called New Coke that happened during the Reagan administration. Basically, the administration went to Coca-Cola and said, we can't have a credible coca eradication program with you being the world's largest consumer of coca. The greatest amount of production of coca leaf goes to the making of Coca-Cola. So the folks at Coca-Cola said, okay, we'll try it. We'll try to make Coca-Cola without the coca leaf extract so you can have your successful war on drugs. But if it doesn't work, we're going back. It didn't work. The new Coke was a hideous flop. It tastes like Dr. Pepper. We already have Dr. Pepper. They went back to using coca leaf extract. The coca leaf extract comes from a company called Stepan Chemical Company in Mayfield, New Jersey. And Stepan is the sole extractor of coca leaf in the United States. They extract a couple thousand tons on behalf of the Coca-Cola company every year. They remove the cocaine and they send the extract to Coca-Cola, and that is why the drink has a flavor that cannot be matched. I would like to open this up now to questions about coca, because I know that people also have strong ideas or opinions about it, either being healthful or not helpful, and I'd like to address some of that in addition to talking a little bit about its shamanic uses.
Wow, thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for that presentation. We do have some questions here, so I can jump into
Wait a second. Michael, I'm not hearing you.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, ideal. You're back.
Sorry about that. I was just saying, thank you so much for the presentation. That was wonderful. We do have some questions, so I can jump into those right away.
Sure.
We have a question here from Jade Klein, who asks, is there any way to legally purchase and or consume coca, perhaps as a tea in the U.S.? My friend brought a small amount back from Ecuador, and it was lovely.
Actually, in preparation for this tonight, I went online, and you can buy coca tea, especially on Etsy.
Okay.
The particular brand that I showed you, Delice, has 100 bag boxes. Now, this is a funny thing. I want to say, and I kind of don't know what to make of this. When you go to the gift shops in the international section, the departures section in Lima, Peru, when you go into the gift shops, there are about 12 or so different brands of coca leaf tea. And I have brought boxes of coca leaf tea home without trouble previously, although it's not clear to me that it's actually okay to do so. But I do know today, because I bothered to check, that if you just do Google coca leaf tea and then hit the shopping button, you'll be able to get a box of 100 bags of Delice coca leaf tea on Etsy for $35. So I did that today just for fun, as sort of a lead up. So you can get it. You can find it.
That sounds like a bargain.
It is a bargain, and it's lovely. It's lovely tasting too. I mean, I like green tea a lot. I like all the caffeine beverages. I mean, not the sodas and things, but I like green tea. But I do find Coca Leaf Tea really pleasant. There's just something lovely about it.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. I'm sure Jade will appreciate that. So moving on to the next question, we have a question now from Caleb, who asks, what detrimental effects does chewing/using coca have on the teeth? How can one mitigate those effects? Would you consider mambe safe for the teeth?
Mambe?
Mambe. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Maybe I'm reading MAMBE.
Not a clue.
Okay. Maybe Caleb can clarify either in the question section or the chat. But the first part of the question.
Yeah. I can answer the teeth part though.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. If you regularly use lime, the calcium with the coca, that will soften the enamel of the teeth. But you can certainly put a quid of coca in your mouth and masticate it and suck on the juice and get benefit from it without the lime. That's what I do. And that's a simple solution. And that will not cause erosion of the teeth.
Okay. And I think we were able to find mambe apparently is a raw leaf used in South America as a superfood.
Okay. No idea. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds like I should. I'll look it up.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Well, we can move on to the next question. So the next question is from Ethan. And Ethan asks, so is it similar to the way betel nut is used in the East? Can you explain the necessity of the lime? Okay.
Betel nut, especially in India, is used often in a preparation called pan. So it's wrapped in a leaf. It may have some sweets in it, some spices of different kinds, fragrant spices, and you basically put this in your mouth and you suck on it, and you get, I mean, there is some spitting out of the juice and also some swallowing of the juice. In the case of betel nut, though, it is a stimulant alkaloid called arecoline that is also illegal in the United States. That is the perk me up factor. So yeah, there's some similarity, although I would say, I mean, I've chewed pan in India, and it definitely has a whole hell of a lot more flavor because of all the exciting spices that get added to it than plain coca leaf does. But yeah, the process is similar for sure.
Okay, cool. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that? It sounds really interesting, like the different spices that are added to that.
Well, it'll be like sweet and aromatic spices. So, they may put in some clove, maybe a little ginger. There's often something that contains sugar in it, so you kind of get, your mouth gets hit with this whole wonderful mix of flavors, and different pan stands will have their different recipes. Like, oh, I love to go to that guy because his pan or her pan, just tastes the best, whatever. But it's typically the sweet, fragrant, aromatic spices.
Okay. And do you ever see anything like that with coca, like different kind of flavors, or people using other type of additives?
No. It's either coca leaf tea or quids of coca, just chewing coca, or the flower in food. This will sound funny, but one of the things I've never encountered in Peru, and I've been going there for a long time, I've never encountered cocaine. I mean, we've been in areas where narcos were cooking cocaine, and have been around some of the cocals, where they're growing coca leaf. You run into coca all over the place. It really is the national beverage of Peru. But, all the cocaine, I mean, for the most part, that goes to the United States.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was curious in the back of my mind, like how much those two like industries, I guess you call it, overlapped. Sounds like they're fairly distinct.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing, with coca, and I think it's hardest for us, for those of us who haven't been brought up with the idea of plant spirits. There's a real leap often. But the shamans in the Andes rely on coca to communicate with the apus. And however they get information enough that at the very least it's confounding and curious. And it's the relationship that exists between coca and the apus, the mountain spirits, is very, very strong. And that gives people a reverential sense of coca in their lives. So it's not just a bag of leaves that you kind of throw around. I mean, it's not that you have to be solemn about it. You don't. But it really does occupy an honored place in society in the Andes.
Very interesting. All right, I'm going to move on to our next question here. We have from Jim Figura. He asks, what climate, soil, growing conditions does it require? Do you think it will eventually be grown indoors outside of its natural range, similar to cannabis?
Well, to the best of our knowledge, wild coca originated on the eastern slopes of the Andes, so in the Amazonian region, so probably something around the Chanchamayo area of Peru. And its cultivation, we see it in low altitude areas being cultivated. In fact, you can't cultivate it high up in the Andes. Nothing grows there but potatoes and maca. So, it can grow well in lowland conditions. The last trip that I made to Peru, which was part of an ayahuasca sustainability project, was along the Rio Tamaya, which is certainly at sea level. And there were plenty of cocals in the bush where, people were growing coca leaf and also people were processing cocaine. There's a lot of narcos in that area. So it grows readily and easily. I would hope that it wouldn't become a greenhouse plant. I mean, we tinker endlessly with these plants, but if there are benefits to be accrued from coca leaf, I'd like to see them accrue to the indigenous people of the Andes, frankly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The next question is from Caleb again. Caleb asks, how did you get started with your work as an ethnobotanist?
Okay. I developed a love of travel very early when I was 15. And I won't go into that story because it's really long, but suffice it to say, I wound up in the tropics and I fell in love with it. And I just thought I wanted to be in these environments forever. And I also had a fantasy, and I'd have no idea where it came from, but in my late teens, that I wanted to be funded to go around the world investigating traditional remedies. And when I expressed that to people, they just laughed like, yeah, sure, you and everybody else, buddy. And I worked in the natural foods industry for a bunch of years. And in 1990, and I developed a pretty decent herbal knowledge. And in 1994, I was asked to join a group of people on a project to go to China to investigate ginseng and eleuthero, which was called Siberian ginseng at the time, and some other things in the far northeast of China, and maybe start an herbal business. And I went there as the herbal expert and actually had some comical times, because during the days where we were going from one manufacturer to another, investigating different ginseng extracts, I would have as many as 50 or 60 or 75 samples in a day. So for about a week, I was just flying at a very high altitude on ginseng. I was whacked on ginseng. And I came back from that trip, and one of the people on it decided to be like spectacularly greedy and wanted the whole business for himself. And I actually really didn't care, because I had learned things, and I said to myself, I could do trips like this even better than the way we did it, planned a little differently in these ways. And almost as soon as I said that to myself, I was hired by a couple of people who had acquired a huge botanical extraction facility in New Jersey, the largest one in North America. And I was their very first hire. And they asked me, what should we do? And I said, you should develop kava. And they said, what do we do to do that? And I said, you pay me a lot of money and send me to the South Pacific. And I kind of held my breath thinking they're going to throw me right out of here. And they were like, okay, you want to start now? And they're like, yeah. And that was 95. And since that time, I've been very fortunate to work in about 45 countries. I've been to the Amazon like 35 times, the Andes about 20 times. It's been a wonderful and enriching experience. And I have also felt at the same time that such extreme and absurd privilege kind of demands that I share this as much as possible with other people. So that's why I'm kind of such a vociferous communicator about all this. I feel that it's just sort of part of the package.
Well, thanks so much for taking us down that little trip of memory lane. It's really awesome to hear. I know it's a bit of a tangent, but it's really nice to hear about your origin story. And something that came up for me when you were sharing, I was going to just kind of follow that up with a question around the imposter syndrome. I'm curious what your relationship has been like with that. Like, just this idea, like, have you ever felt like when you were, getting into this space, especially back then when you mentioned you had this proposal to go travel to explore the kava, how often did you feel that you were kind of out of your waters, and like you weren't really qualified to do the work? Did that ever come up for you?
A funny thing happened, early when I went to Vanuatu, South Pacific in 1995 to start what became known as the kava trade. It turned out that I wound up getting some massive media right away. A humongous feature in the Wall Street Journal, ABC 2020, Newsweek. They just fell like dominoes. And so what did happen was that really at the beginning of my field career, I had a reputation that far exceeded me. And I said, wow, I really all of a sudden I was kind of like extremely prominent for doing this field work. And the field work, by the way, was of excellent quality, but it wasn't as though I had years of it under my belt. So then I really just knuckled down and went, gung-ho as much as I could, as hard as I could for years to build up a body of work to be, proportionate to the reputation that I'd gotten early. So yeah, for a while I was playing catch up. Interesting.
That's really interesting to hear. I think lots of people can resonate with that. And in school, I know even in university, I come across lots of people that are having that experience to some extent. So that's awesome to hear. And I guess for you then, your kind of growth in this field has been very like staged, not linear. Like there's been kind of exponential growth in different areas.
Well, I have certain principles that have really helped me. I mean, for one thing, I really studied the heck out of this. I read dozens and dozens and dozens of books of and by and about explorers and botanists and researchers, and, went to the Royal Geographic Society in London and bought them out of expedition manuals and field work guides and all that stuff. And, learned from people who knew more than me. And, overall, I never go in as the expert. Never. If I come to whatever a place in China and they're let's say they're cultivating goji berries in like a Ningxia or something, they're the experts. I'm not the expert. I'm there to learn. And I am very game. I'm respectful. And if everybody's going barefoot and everybody's going to the waterfall, I'm barefoot going to the waterfall. And everybody's, going swimming for whatever. And, I'm with them. And, pretty much whatever it is, I'm there. And what I have found is that by being respectful and friendly, and also not coming in like I'm the big shot who knows everything when I so clearly don't, this has made doors open up. And the other thing, and I know I said this on the last talk because somebody asked this, when you go to a culture and you express interest in a plant that is critically important to that culture, as is the case in the Andes, for example, with maca, with which I've been working since '98. People can't do enough for you. They can't show you enough. They'll show you things you never thought to ask about or even think of. And so really the success of my career has involved the assistance and the goodwill and the hospitality and the sharing of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of talented people all over the world.
Wow. Thanks again for sharing that, Chris. That's awesome. I think there's some really great lessons there people can take away for whatever they're doing. That's awesome. So I'm going to get to some more of the questions that we have here. We have a question from Ali who asks, does Pepsi not have coca leaf extract?
No. Coca-Cola Company and only the Coca-Cola Company and nobody but the Coca-Cola Company and nobody else has coca leaf extract. Period. And it doesn't matter that PepsiCo is a multi-billion-dollar entity. No, they don't have it, and no, they can't have it.
Wow.
It's weird and it's unfair.
Yeah. Interesting. A question from Sunshine. Sunshine asks, what does Stepan do with the cocaine extracted from the process? Do they sell it to a pharmaceutical company?
Well, that's an awful lot of cocaine. It's funny, the Stepan chemical people show up at trade shows that I show up at, and I always go up to their booth and try to chat them up about Coca-Cola. And in general, they go completely apoplectic. And they've all been taught this line to say, our customer does not want us to speak about this. Okay, it's almost like they go robotic, like they have the line, they have to say it. And I go up to them at every trade show. So I kept bugging this one executive at a Stepan booth for like 4 trade shows. I was like, John, look, I'm really not going to go away. I'm going to keep coming to visit you. Why don't you just tell me? Just give me the story here, right? And he said, okay, and if, I will deny ever talking with him. I'm like, cool, I'm cool with that. Basically, he insists that they incinerate most of the cocaine. And let's assume that's so. I don't know. But I know that getting him, I wasn't an asshole about it, so he didn't just have good reason to just shout at me and tell me to get lost.
Right.
And I was persistent and I was friendly. I was like, come on, man, I'm going to keep coming back. I'm going to see you at the next show. I'm just going to come up and chat you every day. Sooner or later, you're going to tell me, why not tell me now? So, so yeah, they process thousands of tons of coca leaf. And theoretically, they incinerate most or all of the cocaine.
Wow. Okay, good to know. Thanks for sharing that. And we have another question now from Sarah Tracy. She asked, does coca grow in Asia or Africa, or is it strictly an Andean species?
It is an Andean plant. In the genus Erythroxylum, there are species that grow around the world, but the Erythroxylum coca and Erythroxylum novagranitens, they're Andean plants. They're not growing anywhere else.
Okay. The next question here is from Haley. So it reads, as a naturopath based in Australia with post-grad degrees in evidence-based complementary medicine as well as medicines management and currently completing studies in psychoactive plants, I would love to know how to get personally involved in the movement to support and increase knowledge and awareness of the benefits of psychoactive plants. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, yeah, I think that going to conferences, and also if you have the interest and the ability in terms of, money, time, that kind of thing, to go to some places where psychoactive plants are part and parcel of culture, whether it's ayahuasca in the Amazon or iboga in Africa or peyote ceremonies or whatever. I mean, I think having this exposure is a way. The thing about these plants is that they are experiential. And while I'm not suggesting that people can't study them, that is, look at them from a chemical analytical standpoint, investigate potential new compounds, let's say with NMR technology or something like that. Really, these by putting them into your internal laboratory. And what I've found at gatherings like Spirit Plant Medicine and some others is that there are communities of people around the world who eagerly and enthusiastically get together on a regular basis and talk about all aspects of these things, from the professional therapeutic applications and considerations about that to the truly wild hair on fire. How do you explain that, kind of amazing psychedelic experience type end of things? So I would say go to conferences and also go to places where these plants are in use. And if you're so inclined, put them in your body.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So I'm going to try and, I'm not sure if this question makes sense to me, but it might make sense to you. So the question is from Selena. The question is, Lehia in it. Please talk of the different kinds of Lehia, Lehia, one can use, like ash, lime, any others that you know of.
Okay, I think you're referring to the lime that is used for the coca. I think that is one of the. That might even be Quechua. The lime can be made from burned leaves. It can be made from scraped minerals. It can be made from burned calcium. You can also use unburned calcium. Seashells can be burned. There are a number of things that are high in calcium that can be burned to ash and then used for that, or just calcium oxide or calcium hydroxide as they naturally occur.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. The next question is from Carrie. Carrie says, outside of not supporting the cocaine trade, what nonprofits, fair trade projects, or regional organizations could one support to both bring about financial help to awareness to the issues created by the cocaine trade?
I don't really know, actually. I've never investigated that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see cocaine present in the communities in which I work in the Andes. It's just not a thing there.
Right.
So there's no reason to mitigate anything there. And, in the regions that I've been in where there is narco trafficking, the division, as far as I can detect, and I've been around it a little bit, a decent amount over the years, is that you have the people who are the narco traffickers and the folks that they hire and use, whether it's for transport or harvesting or whatever. And then you have everybody else that isn't part of that, but maybe in some communities might benefit by extra sales in a store that they own or a restaurant or something. So it's kind of a weird equation. I mean, I think the greatest mitigation efforts really seem to be with or seem most needed among users, people who are obsessively using cocaine, and that for the most part is here.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. The next question here is from Roni, and they're asking about, let's see where to go here. Yeah, just kind of the I guess the use case and utility for coca in the West. So the question is, it seems coca is used to deal with the harsh environment, to give stamina for harvesting and planting, as you had mentioned, and it is not psychedelic. So why would a Westerner in New York or Canada, for example, take it?
Well, it is refreshing, and kind of refreshment's kind of a funny word, because I think in our culture it sort of boils down to watching commercials where bubbles are coming up in a glass of soda.
Yeah.
But refreshment as a concept is actually a different thing. For example, I meditate every day. And when I do, excuse me, it refreshes me. It's like, okay, a little bit more sort of newborn in a way. And having a cup of Coca tea, I mean, look, if you're driving like mad to work and you're juggling your Coca tea and you're shaving in your mirror and whatever, you're not going to have a moment. Okay? You're just not going to. That's just stupid living. Okay, that's just dumb. But let's say you have a cup of Coca tea. You sit down, like, I'm not going to do anything for 10 minutes. I'm going to have a cup of Coca tea. If you do that, then it will in some ways be truly refreshing. It'll be part of that moment of doing for yourself. I don't think that Coca Leaf is going to give people particular revelations. It's not like peyote. It's not like mushrooms. It's not like ayahuasca. It's critically valuable to a huge number of people throughout South America, but it's certainly not a psychedelic, but it will help to refresh you. And I would say that there are a lot of people who need refreshment. I mean, I also frankly feel very refreshed when I do, sometimes wrung out too, and maybe a little kick down the street when I drink ayahuasca. But overall, that kind of a little bit shiny and new, you sort of get a smaller version of that, I think, if you take some time and drink some Coca tea.
Awesome. Refreshment is the answer, so I appreciate that. That's awesome. The next question here is from Madeline, who asks, what would you recommend as a starting point for people who are interested in having a career such as yours?
Well, if you would like to have a career like mine, in addition to inuring yourself, knowing that you're going to get tropical diseases galore and that bad things are going to happen to you out there, as long as you accept that as just like, yeah, sure, good, fine, fair play, whatever, then I think it's helpful to find out, for example, what ethnobotany programs exist today. Different universities and colleges have had ethnobotany programs for time. I think there's one at Oxford. I believe that there's one at, is it Duke, I think? No, Princeton. There used to be one at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I don't know if there still is because the director of that's gone. You might be able to find out through New York Botanical Garden, Missouri Botanical Garden, Kew Botanical Garden in London. All of them are connected with ethnobotanical programs and projects. It may be possible to intern with any number of them and kind of get some field chops going that way. There's no question that as we are very busily harming much of the natural environment, and with greater and greater competition for natural resources, that we need more people in the field to do thoughtful work to understand what's happening out there, to promote sustainable projects that don't damage the environment and aren't just extractive industries. And my take is that for people who want to be in this field of work, in the field of ethnobotany, I do believe there's a good future. There's a good future for men and women alike.
That's inspirational. Thanks for sharing that. So we're approaching the end of our time here. I think we have maybe time for one more question, and then I'll turn it over to you for any last words you might want to share with the audience today. The question here is from Selena, who's, I think, just getting at the question around whether there's different qualities to coca leaves. Like, are there any, she mentioned maybe smaller coca leaves being more potent. Is there any variation that reflects potency or anything like that?
We know that there's a difference in the coca, in the cocaine content of erythroxylum coca versus Nova granitans. We know that the erythroxylum coca has a little bit more cocaine in it. I've not seen or read or ever heard anything suggesting that larger or smaller leaves would somehow be more suitable. I mean, in general, you know, in plant life, early on is when you get a great concentration of active principles. You know, certainly have that with tea. You want the young, tender shoots. But I don't know that that really translates with coca, and I've never seen anything about that. So that might be a very good project to undertake. What I think does make a difference is the freshness of coca leaves and how long they've been sitting around. Although alkaloids are pretty stable, and dried coca leaves, maybe a little bit old, would probably still have a decent cocaine value and a value of the other alkaloids, but might not have such a great flavor. So that would be a limiting factor.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I think that's it for the questions today, just because of time. But again, thank you so much. Is there any other kind of last words you want to share with the folks today?
Well, first of all, I do want to say, Michael, I really appreciate your hosting. It's great to have you as a host on this, and I'm very happy that you're fielding the questions, and thank you for that. Yeah, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to do this series, and you know, I'm not going to deal with any more questions about coca right now, but I do want to say that next Tuesday, we'll be wrapping up this 4-part series. Next Tuesday is all about cannabis. There's probably nobody out there who has any relation to or interest in cannabis, but if you hear of somebody who does, no, I think, you know, I'm not saying it's the best, kind of a best for last type of thing, but I think given what's been happening with cannabis over the last bunch of years, there's some fun territory to cover. And I really do want to go deeply into the tradition of cannabis and its use as a spiritual aid in the East and how that is migrated here. So I hope that people can join us next week. Again, I want to thank MAPS. I want to thank you and all you folks out there, whether you're from California or Colorado or Vancouver or Guatemala or Australia, or all the far-flung places you folks have thrown up here on the right-hand side. I just want to say thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to be with you. You all take really good care.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for the kind words. And again, thanks for the presentation. Hope you have a wonderful, relaxing, and most importantly, refreshing evening.
Thanks. Bless you all. Bye now.
All right. So that's it for today. To close off the session, I'd love to thank Chris again, of course, for joining us to launch this series and for the last 3 episodes, which have really been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible stories around coca today. I would also love to share a big thanks to the volunteers at Make It Maps Canada for helping to put together this series. As you might know, research is very expensive, and the psychedelic renaissance is built on a foundation of solid research into psychedelics. To continue the momentum and build a strong case for psychedelic use, more research needs to be done, and so we appreciate any and all donations that are made, as these go directly to helping to fund this important research. So that's it for today's episode. Make sure to tune in next week for our final Expert Edition episode, where Chris will be discussing cannabis. Thank you to everyone for attending, and we will see you on the next episode.